I know, I've changed the background again. Deal with it again. For those of you who didn't see the post I put out on my Instagram, which will be linked in the description if you don't already follow me, basically I'm just changing up the format of these videos just because I felt it was a little bit too me ranting to a camera, and I wanted it to be more sort of analysis of the fights, because believe it or not, and you know, watching these back, you wouldn't have really gathered it from the videos. I have, you know, competed in combat sports before, obviously nowhere near to the level of these. I've trained, I've competed in amateur locals, not many times, I will admit. As much as I am quite a casual fan, I do have some sort of knowledge, and I kind of wanted to show that off, and you know, through this even sort of further my knowledge. Anyway, on to what you clicked on the video for. UFC 300 was last weekend, and it was an amazing card, full of entertainment, full of amazing fights. We're just going to talk about what I believe are the three most important fights for the general UFC and for the card in itself, the three most provocative fights that we can talk the most about. That is actually quite harsh lighting, isn't it? Oh well. Oh wait, no, I can dim it. Haha! How's this looking now? That's a bit better. I'll deal with it. I can fix it in post if I need. I know my last video was called Fight of the Year. Well, this is Knockout of the Year, I'll tell you that much for free. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF title. We've got the highlights up from TNT Sports here. Now, going into this fight, I was hoping Max would win, but I was leaning more towards Justin. He's been more active. Max is moving up a weight class. I think he's fought at lightweight before and it didn't go particularly well, certainly not as well as his featherweight career has done. But let's just get straight into this fight. Obviously very similar sort of reach and height. Max a little bit younger. But when you go into this first round, yeah, you wouldn't assume Max was the heavier guy. And that's probably because he would normally fight at a similar sort of weight. He's just starving, or not starving, sorry, he's draining himself down to make featherweight. But you know, he's light on his feet, he's flicking his jab. Obviously he's known for his boxing, but in this fight, it was his kicks really that won it for him, in my opinion. You know, they were maybe a bit of a shock to Gaethje's system. And of course, in that very first round on the buzzer, he breaks his nose with a spinning back kick. And I spoke about this in the last fight in the Wardley Clark video. You know, a broken nose, that's going to hinder your breathing and therefore your cardio and your fitness. So in a 5-round MMA fight, 5 minutes, 5 rounds, 25 minutes of fighting, you know, it's going to hinder you. I've just seen the replay there, that's being backfist. And he almost goes out the cage, actually. Promise the lighting will be better in the next video. Anyway, so the first round, I think that was easily a Max Holloway round. He landed the cleanest shots. He was quicker on his feet, he's more active, and, you know, the exclamation mark at the end of the sentence was the kick that breaks his nose at the end of the round. Obviously, you know, it ends in knockout at this point, so there's not really much point score in it. But, you know, it was a clear round, nowhere near a 10-8. The second round, for me, felt like a bit more of the same. I felt Gaethje was kind of just like, it's settling in that his nose is gone and his cardio's not there. He did throw a couple good shots, but, you know, Max, he just seemed a little bit too quick. Obviously, there was the 2 eye pokes in this round, which, you know, a broken nose, eye pokes in both eyes, is not going to help you going into a fight, and that was it. He just, you know, there was the 2 eye pokes in that round. But other than that, again, pretty convincing Holloway round, in my opinion. Going into the third round, some good shots, some good kicks, especially to the body, a right hand right on the very end of the round. Max Holloway 2 rounds. I don't know why I'm scoring it, we all already know. We go into the third round, and for me, this was Max's most dominant round. I felt like he was in the zone. He knows, realistically, he drops him pretty, you know, sort of halfway through. He sort of realised at this point, I think, that Gaethje was there to be taken, which he didn't end up doing, obviously, until the 5th round. So going into the 4th round, it was a tight round, I would say. From memory, I'm watching the highlights back now, so I might amend that statement. But, you know, Max is he's quite a volume striker. He's not like a one-hitter quitter in the way that Gaethje can be. Quite quick, quite nimble. He's hitting a lot of shots, but he's not necessarily stinging them the way that some of Gaethje's shots were stinging him in this round. I did think, first time watching this, 3.5 minutes in, Gaethje kind of looked the way that Tony Ferguson looked when he fought Gaethje. He looked a bit beaten. He looked a bit more concerned about his defence. Obviously, we saw against Chandler, when Gaethje fought Chandler, there was a lot less care for defence from both of those guys. There was a lot of care from defence from Justin here. That's probably the nose, because you got to think it's broken every time he's hitting it. It's affected him a lot more than it would normally, considering his nose is broken. I still think he won this round. He just landed a couple cleaner shots. He did drop him down. I think officially they haven't given it as a knockdown. To me, he punches him and he ends up on his bum. Like, that's a knockdown to me. That seems kind of like if Gaethje had won the fight, they would have given it a knockdown, because it's better for the brand of Gaethje of the first person to put Holloway down. And because Holloway won, they want to keep him on the brand. I've just seen it there, yeah. So they go in for a clinch. He throws that hook over the top, lands him on the temple. His leg sort of buckles under him as he's going the same way as it, and he drops down. Flash knockdown. He wasn't necessarily, hurt. It's not like the fight was close to being stopped. It was a knockdown, though. So that's, again, just promotion from the UFC to say, we've got this BMF champion, this bad mother who has never been put down. But he has been put down. Justin did well at this point to sort of pile the pressure on. Max was looking for a counter when he did that, but, Gaethje, it felt like this was his opportunity to steal the fight from Holloway, and he didn't do that. And then going into that 5th round, Gaethje knows at this point, I believe, he needs a finish, and that's why he's coming. He's a bit gung-ho, throwing that overhand, but he is getting caught more because of it. He's leaving himself more open, more exposed. He ends up going down. Max almost finishes him 2 minutes into the round, or maybe not nearly finished him, but it's a very dominant exchange from Holloway, landing a lot more shots, not taking many, a couple knees in there, a couple kicks, but a lot of punches. Like I said, a volume striker, a very good boxer, especially for UFC standard. And then obviously, ironically, it happens against Justin the Highlight Gaethje. There is the highlight of the whole card, really, which is he goes for this sort of jumping, I think it's called rolling thunder kick. That might be just what it's called in UFC. He goes for this jumping kick. And Max says, nah, we're meeting in the middle on this Monster Energy drink. Bang, bang. Nah, stay here. And they're just slugging it out. We've seen Max do this before in fights. And he wins most of these occasions. So I don't know why people are still doing it with him. It's just like a male pride thing, I guess. And just slump, face first, eating canvas. Right on that Monster Energy drink. Which, they're the biggest winners out of this, really. Because how many times have you seen that clip over the past week since this card, and Monster Energy are just lapping it up because their product is, the second most focal thing in the shot of Gaethje, flat on the ground. So let's just look at the stats for Gaethje versus Holloway. You're looking at, on the UFC stats website, the knockdown was not given. To me, I think he got dropped. That's all I'm going to say. Gaethje threw 199 strikes, and of those 199 strikes, 103 landed. Max Holloway threw 309 strikes, and 181 of them landed. Holloway landed almost as many as Gaethje threw. That's the difference between the strikers they are. Max Holloway is a lot more technical of a striker, accuracy, volume, that sort of stuff. Gaethje, he's a bit wilder, not as technical. He's got power, he can knock you out, he can clean you out in one strike, but, he's not the same level of fighter. When you're looking at percentages head to body, and leg, obviously, it is a lot more, it's really even. It's pretty much a third to each of them for Max. It's 34% to head, 34% to body, 31% to leg. That's very even, mixing it up. Whereas Gaethje, 42% to the head, 32% to the legs, 25% to the body. So there is quite an even spread, but it is a lot more head hunting. And when you look at per round, Holloway's volume just goes up and up each round. His lowest thrown was in the first, and his most was in the last. Obviously, quite a lot of them in the last were these sort of flurries when he had him hurt, obviously towards the end of the round when he dropped him, but that doesn't negate the fact that he did have a lot more output, and it was growing that in the round. Whereas Gaethje's output, to be fair, it was growing as well, but it dropped off after the 5th round. His highest round was the 4th, which is the one I believe he won. For me, what's next for both of these? Gaethje just fight another lightweight contender, keep your name in the mix. Maybe Charles Oliveira coming off a loss, maybe Arman, who just beat Charles Oliveira, although he's probably looking more up at the winner of Poirier Islam. And for Max, I know he's called out to Poirier, which I would love to see that fight, by the way, and there is a bit of a narrative of he's been protected from Max because Max almost this title gatekeeper. But for me, I think staying at lightweight is a much more stacked division. If he wants to become champion again, I feel like featherweight's his best option because it's, in my opinion, less stacked division. Although it's a fantastic division, lightweight for me is the hardest division to win a title in. Not only because of how good the champion is, but how good the challengers are for that champion. Such as, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje was just put down, Michael Chandler's up there, you could have Conor coming back, Conor versus Holloway, that's a fight that they can make a rematch. But for me, for Max, I think he should stick around at lightweight for a bit, man, because I think there's a lot more money to be made there, Conor McGregor money, that's a real thing, believe it or not. And the rematch, there's a narrative there, that could be Conor's last fight in the UFC, potentially. You could go for the title, you could become a double champ. I know it's not technically a double champ because he's not holding both belts, but you could be a 2-division weight champion. So for me, Max, I think he should hang tight with that BMF belt in the lightweight division. So moving on now from one knockout to another. That sounded so weird, but we're going to go with it because why not? So we're going to a first round stoppage of a former light heavyweight champion who didn't lose the belt, he gave it up through injury. And I feel like a lot of people sort of counted him. I mean, I don't know why I'm saying this. I'm saying this as if he's won, he lost. But a lot of people were counting him out of this fight just because of how good Pereira has looked in the UFC. He's only really looked bad against, or I would say bad, he's only not looked completely in control against Izzy. Going into this, I did think Pereira would win. I thought it would be a later stoppage than it was. I don't think anyone was expecting this early. But, watching this fight, it's labelled highlights. It's the full fight, essentially. It starts, 2 seconds in. And to me, Pereira, he just looked so calm and so confident in there. He didn't really look like he's just getting to grips with his footwork, obviously fighting against the southpaw. And against the southpaw, one of the sort of basic moves you would use would be backhanded cross. So for Pereira that'd be a right hand, and then the lead hook, because when you're in opposite stances you can't see here as much. So when that lead hook comes, you see it a lot later. And especially in MMA, when you're worried about takedowns, obviously not as much against Pereira, but you've got the smaller gloves, it's harder to defend. Your hands are probably a bit lower to defend against the takedowns and the body shots, which Pereira was doing a lot in this fight. You see that shot late, and Pereira is known for his left hook. That is his sort of staple trademark shot that he uses. So going into this, you're thinking the writing's on the wall for Hill to go down, really. But he was speaking with confidence, and, he's getting a couple good leg kicks. But Pereira's leg kicks are something to be studied, really, because he has no telegraph. He doesn't load up on them, so you don't see them, but you can tell based on how people walk after them that they kill. But, he was using a lot of body jabs in this, and I think that's to get the lead hand of Jamal Hill lower, so that when that left hook comes over the top, he's got more space to cover with his hand to block it, and he's got less time to see it because he's a southpaw, and he's got a smaller glove to block it with than he would in kickboxing or boxing. So just watching this, it is quite a back and forth exchange, but Pereira doesn't look like he's really going out of second gear here. He's looking pretty calm, he's moving around him, he's, staying out of his range, so his shots aren't landing clean and flush, Hill's shots that is, if landing at all. There's a couple body kicks, obviously, 2 minutes left in the round, there's the infamous sort of let him cook moment, if you will. Jamal Hill goes for an inside leg kick, it's a low blow, and Herb Dean, obviously, as you should in that scenario, comes in, calls a timeout, gives Pereira time to rest. He says, no, let me cook. And he says, all right, carry on then. They touch gloves, and then it's boom, 5 seconds afterwards. It's that, as much as I've been talking about the left hook, which is sort of what I was expecting, it's a kind of hybrid left hook uppercut. It comes sort of like that, and it's like just the knuckles that land, it's not the whole fist, and he's just slumped him, and Herb looks like he's getting ready to call it off. In my opinion, I think that's the perfect time to stop it. Looking back at it, he starts with his sort of right hand up, and the shots are landing clean, but it just, that right hand just gets lower and lower and lower, and with someone who's as heavy-handed as Pereira, you don't want to be letting him land that many shots to the head unprotected. So for me, brilliant stoppage by Herb Dean, brilliant fight, brilliant knockout by Pereira. When we actually look at the stats, Alex Pereira was 24 of 30 total strikes, and Jamal Hill was 12 of 22. So he's got worse accuracy, less volume, and less connections. The phrase levels is used a lot, but that is levels. And then after this fight, I think, obviously it's translated, so I don't know exactly what he said, but he said something along the lines of, he wants to defend it a couple more times, but he wants to be up to heavyweight. For me, keep defending the light heavyweight belt for quite a while longer. I know the allure of being a 3-weight champion will be, and the first one at that, will be massive for him, and he will have the belief to do it. For me, I think you should stay at light heavyweight for a bit. You never know, you could have Adesanya coming up, you can have that trilogy MMA fight, finally settle the score. Light heavyweight has been missing a star for a while now, and been missing a true dominant champion since John Jones left. You know, throughout sort of a while in the UFC, most of the biggest cards were headlined by a light heavyweight bout. And for me, it's been missing that sort of excitement, because, you know, you've had Hills had the belt, Blachowicz had the belt, Glover Teixeira had the belt, Yuri had the belt. You know, it was a bit hot potato for a bit, and now I feel like Pereira is someone who is a character the UFC can put a lot of stock into, do a lot of promotion for, help build the brand of the UFC. He's scary, he's cold as ice, he's entertaining to watch, he always goes for the knockout, he most of the time gets the knockout, and considering he's only been in the UFC, was it 2 years, 3 years? Something like that. He's doing a job, and you know, and the amount of fights he's had in that time, it puts to shame a lot of UFC fighters. You're looking at Pereira now, who's fighting 3-4 times a year, and that's what we want to see. We want to see champions defending their belts. We want to see contenders building up their record, becoming title challengers. So for me, what's next for him? Keep defending your belt, and then maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 defenses down the line, you move up to heavyweight. Now this, probably the most controversial one. There's quite a lot of split on this one. For me, this fight comes down to the subjectiveness of MMA scoring. Whether you think a failed submission is worth more points than control time. So before I go into the highlights, actually, I do want to just talk about the fight as a whole. Control time, Charles Oliveira, 2 minutes 32. Sarukin, I think that's his name. I'm sorry again if I'm mispronouncing this. 8 minutes and 41 seconds. That's almost 2 whole rounds. Like, you know, a round and a half of control time. Now, for me, personally, I think finishing or attempting to finish should be worth more than control time. So if you're doing nothing with the control time, I don't think you should be stood up necessarily, or quickly, but I think, you know, you should be encouraged by the scoring to attempt a submission, attempt a ground and pound, you know, rather than just sort of hold someone down and not let them fight. So when you look at that, you've got 4 submission attempts for Charles Oliveira to Sarukin's 0. Charles Oliveira didn't put down a takedown. Sarukin was 2 for 4. Strike-wise, Sarukin out-threw and outlanded significantly. It's 55 strikes thrown from Oliveira to 117 from Sarukin, and 33 landed for Oliveira to 75 landed. So on the feet, significantly even just in the striking department, because there was quite a lot of ground striking and clinch striking. And obviously, being in that top position, you're more likely to get that ground and pound offense, that ground striking off, than you are on the back. So that can contribute to it to a lot. Although from memory, I give round 1 to Oliveira, round 2 to Sarukin, and round 3, I think it's still a bit of a toss-up. Neither of them, to me, were 10-8s. The first one, maybe, because he was very close to finishing him in that first round. For me, Charles Oliveira didn't really look the best. No, sorry, he doesn't get the takedown. Charles Oliveira throws the leg kick and scrambles on, jumps, gets the sort of guillotine. Or it might be an arm triangle. So I think it's a triangle. And then, he's transitioning. It's from the highlights, obviously a lot of control time where you're sitting on someone isn't as entertaining as, this more engaging submission offense and defense and reversals. So the highlights, are very sort of engaging to watch. And it was a very high level jiu-jitsu game in there. Stands up and he gets the guillotine, pulls him down, and it is very close. You can see the refs getting very close. There's a point where I thought he did tap in that first round. So you could argue, with how close it was to a finish, that it was a 10-8. You could also argue the resilience means it's only a 10-9, and obviously the control time in the rest of the round. There's a really good reversal from him afterwards while he's still getting down. There's some good ground strikes from Oliveira. So for me, he easily won the first round, and then with the damage from the ground and pound, Sarukin won the second round. The third round for me, it's so close. A different ref, I believe, would have called this off. Incorrectly, I might add, because it looks like he goes out. The ref sort of goes, you're right, and he puts his thumb up. From the broadcast, you think he's out, unless you can hear the ref, obviously. And I believe he was saved by the bell there. I believe if that round was 30 seconds longer, he would have gone out. So you then could argue that's Oliveira's round, but there was a lot more striking and control time for Sarukin. For me, I would have given it Oliveira, but I'm not upset that Sarukin won. I don't think it's a robbery or, that kind of thing. I think Charles definitely got, if they ever do a rematch, definitely got room for improvement. Definitely could win the rematch. What's next for both of them? Sarukin's dead set on a title shot, which he should be because he's beaten the number 1 contender. He's now the number 1 contender. So he'll be waiting for the winner of UFC 301. Charles Oliveira, he could fight the loser of that fight. He could fight Justin Gaethje. He could fight Max Holloway. There's a lot of opportunity for him in this one, and he didn't look bad. So Oliveira 100% can still hang with the top of the division, and that's what he should do next. Obviously take a little bit of a break, make sure he's recovered, make sure he's fine to go into the next one. So those are the fights I want to talk about from UFC 300. Big news, we've got obviously 301 was announced, which is Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. That is going to be a very good fight. And then of course, we have the official announcement of Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. Check out my video 2 before this one, where I sort of just explored Conor McGregor's career recently as a whole, and then hopefully with this new format I am planning on doing previews. Alright, I know I said I'd do a UFC 300 preview, and I know I said I might do a preview for the Wardley Clark fight, and I haven't done either, but I really do want to do previews and predictions. Anyway, let me know what you thought of the card. Let me know what you think of the new format. I think it's a bit more chilled. Obviously you see me swinging around on my chair a lot, just a habit. I will fix the lighting for next one. It's upset me as well. Hopefully this one's actually got a thumbnail. I will hopefully do a video breaking down Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia after that one has happened. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Make sure you follow all the socials. Subscribe to the channel. I have got some stuff coming out, not just fight stuff. I've got some film stuff as well, because this is obviously a film channel. I want to have a trailer. I'm going to have some teaser images. There's a teaser already up on my Instagram. I'll flash it up on screen here. Make sure you follow the Instagram so you know when I'm posting and what I'm posting. But I've rambled on long enough. This is going to be probably the longest video I have. It's going to be a long one to edit, and I'll hopefully have it out before the end of the week. Yeah, take care.